Greetings. This is Now TV, Diplomatic Corner. In today's program, we have for you, dear viewers, His Excellency Ambassador Mahamat Ali Hassen of the Republic of Chad. I'm honored to have you with me, Son Excellence. We are going to do the interview in English as well as in French. Therefore, bear with us. We are going to introduce His Excellency. I would like to say a few words in English as well as in French. Dans l'interview, nous discuterons de la contribution du République Tchad à la diplomatie et la politique étrangère et la pays. Le public sera intéressé de connaître les longues relations entre le Tchad et l'Éthiopie, Son Excellence. Les relations bilatérales actuelles et multiples facettes ainsi que la relation entre le peuple les deux pays. Le public voudra également, Son Excellence, entendre parler de votre travail de diplomatie et de votre carrière. I would like to say a few words in English about the long career of His Excellency Ambassador Mahamat, who is also not only the ambassador of the Republic of Chad in Ethiopia, he is also the permanent representative of Chad to the Union Africaine, to the African Union. And he has a very, very long career. He has served his country, Chad, for a very, very long time. Among his accolades is, on top of being a diplomat, he had served in different capacities, like, for instance, representing Chad in the Rio Conference. He was the head of the delegation of Chad in the negotiation of the Cotonou Agreement. He was governor of Chad to the World Bank in Washington, D.C. He was governor of Chad to the Islamic Development Bank. He was also the point person responsible for the European Development Fund, representing Chad. And also he was responsible to be an interlocutor with the World Food Program, WFP, being responsible representing Chad. He speaks French, English, and Arabic. And he has been to Addis, representing his country, Chad, Republic of Chad, since Janvier 2021, since January 2021. I welcome you, Mr. Ambassador.
Merci.
Bonjour à tous. I'll start with the first question in English, as well as I'll give it in French. And feel free to use any English, a mix of English, a mix of French. We will be more than honored to listen to what you say. So the first question is I have for you, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur, Son Excellence. What are the highlights and the significance of the Ethiopian-Chad bilateral relations? In French, quels sont les temps forts de l'importance des relations bilatérales Éthio-Tchad? Merci.
Je vous remercie de nous fournir l'occasion, l'opportunité d'échanger avec vous sur des questions qui vous intéressent concernant les relations entre mon pays, le Tchad, et l'Éthiopie. Des questions qui m'intéressent également forcément parce que je suis maintenant ambassadeur du Tchad auprès de la République fédérale et démocratique d'Éthiopie, mais aussi représentant permanent auprès de l'Union africaine. Je dois dire que les relations entre le Tchad et l'Éthiopie sont bonnes. Il ne peut en être autrement qu'entre deux pays qui partagent les mêmes idéaux, qui ont les mêmes défis et qui ont probablement les mêmes objectifs. Le Tchad et l'Éthiopie sont tous deux membres fondateurs de l'Union africaine.
Thank you for providing me with the opportunity to discuss with you the issues that interests you regarding the relations between my country, Chad, and Ethiopia. The questions that also interest me, and necessarily also because I am now Chad's ambassador to Ethiopia, but also permanent representative to the African Union, I must say that relations between Chad and Ethiopia are good. It cannot be otherwise when between two grandpas who shares the same ideals, who have the same challenges, and who probably have the same objectives. Chad and Ethiopia are two founding members of the African Union, or AU. First President stayed here very often with the framework of this organization that creates important, lasting links. I share with you the challenges that the two countries encounter, the common challenges that these two countries, both of us are landlocked, no access, we don't have access to the mother, we have populations that share the same religions in Chad as in Ethiopia, we have Christians, Muslims, we have also countries which have an essential rural vocation, essentially agricultural. Chad, for example, a country considered as a rural practically, more than 90% of these populations. We have populations which are around 80 million inhabitants. Of course, it is without common measure with the Ethiopian population, and this population is 80 to 90%. As I said earlier, 80% or 90% that gives agriculture in its perception and its broadest sense. We are a country which has nearly 40 hectares of arable land, therefore suitable for agriculture. Even if we have a good part of our country which is compromised in the desert, and even in our desert, there are areas which are suitable for agriculture with high elements. Also, we are a country with breeding the last statistics which we will provide for the FAO credits us with about 100 million head. It's not for all species. We have camels, dromedaries, we have cattle, we have oxen, sheep. So all this makes our vacation, it is the one we think we have in common with Ethiopia, which has a good reference, especially in terms of agriculture in this sector. So, just now we are only founders of AU. The objective of our organization is known, and this objective is widely shared by Ethiopia and Chad. It is to contribute in such a way that Africa unites as a best as possible, as close as possible, and that African can count in the concert of nations. That is what we are all working towards. It is a major objective that we are looking for, and therefore it is in relation to that all our activities, all our actions towards the achievement of this objective. Then, more especially between Chad and Ethiopia, you know that Chad and Ethiopia collaborate in particular in the field of air transport. You have a company which is today considered as one of very best in Africa, and our own airline, which obviously does not have the same common as Ethiopian currently benefits from the advice and assistance of Ethiopian. In the same area, we have sometimes had personnel trained for piloting aircraft intended for ground service. Also here in Ethiopia, and since my arrival, we have explored other areas likely to serve fields of cooperation between the two countries. In the recent past, our national services are very interested in your experience here in terms of using waste to produce energy, because we may not be comforted with Ethiopia for much longer. Energy probes and therefore all the opportunities of this type, experiences of this type are important to us, and therefore we are aiming very soon for relations in this sector. Also, there are other sectors. I am not going to start listening them here on which we are trying to build cooperation. I personally hope that these actions we are taking at this time, the initiatives we are putting in place at this time, will bear fruit in the relatively foreseeable future.
Très près, votre expérience ici en matière d'utilisation, n'est-ce pas, des déchets à l'effet de produire de l'énergie, parce que nous sommes confrontés, peut-être pas plus pour longtemps avec l'Éthiopie, a des problèmes énergétiques. Et donc, toutes les opportunités de ce type, toutes les expériences de ce type nous sont importantes. Et donc, nous ambitionnons très bientôt de tisser des relations dans ce secteur-là également. Il y a d'autres secteurs, je ne vais pas me mettre à les énumérer ici, sur lesquels nous essayons de bâtir une coopération. J'espère personnellement que les actions que nous menons en ce moment, que les initiatives que nous mettons en place en ce moment, porteront leurs fruits dans un avenir relativement prévisible.
Merci, d'accord. What is the focus of Chad's, your country's foreign and economic policy? Quel est l'objectif de la politique étrangère et économique de votre pays, République Tchad?
Au Tchad, nous sommes convaincus aujourd'hui que nous devons tout mettre en œuvre, nous devons contribuer autant que possible, autant que faire se peut, à l'avènement d'un monde, disons, plus pacifique, en particulier d'une Afrique pacifiée, d'une Afrique, disons, sans crise, et d'une Afrique résolument tournée vers l'avenir, et d'une Afrique susceptible, comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, de compter dans le concert des nations. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons pratiquement adhéré à toutes les initiatives tendant vers cet objectif, initiatives qui sont prises au niveau notamment de l'Union africaine. La ZLECA, par exemple, nous considérons que c'est une opportunité tout à fait, disons, excellente de contribuer à nous aider à atteindre, disons, cet objectif-là. Nous disons également que nous devons nous entraider entre pays africains. Comme vous le savez, l'Afrique traverse depuis un certain temps de nombreuses crises. Nous avons des défis sécuritaires importants, notamment le terrorisme, qui est aujourd'hui l'un des plus grands fléaux que nous rencontrons en Afrique.
C'est vrai.
Par les pertes humaines qu'il occasionne, par la désorganisation des sociétés qu'il entraîne, par la déliquescence, disons, et la fragilisation de nos États que nous observons malheureusement de ci, de là. Et donc, notre diplomatie, elle est tout entière vouée à la réalisation de ces objectifs. Nous adhérons à toute initiative, à tout ce qui peut contribuer à atteindre cet objectif. Nous essayons, dans la mesure de nos possibilités, d'aider au retour de la paix, d'aider à la résorption, n'est-ce pas?
In Chad, we are convinced today that we must do everything we can. We must contribute as much time as possible to the time that those can do for the advent of a world that's said to be more peaceful, in particular an African than peaceful of an African saying, without crisis of an African reasoning to turn towards the future, of an African stable, as I said a moment ago, to count in the concert of a nations. This is the reason why we have particularly adhered to all initiatives towards the objective, initiatives that are taken at the level of African Union in particular. ZELCAF, for example, considering that it is an excellent opportunity to help us achieve this objective, we also say that we must help each other between African countries. As you know, Africa been going through for some time, going through many crises. We have significant security challenges, including terrorism, which is today one of the greatest scourge that we encounter in Africa, but the human losses they cause by the organizations they lose societies that is caused by delinquency saying and the weakening of our status that we unfortunately observe from here. And so our diplomacy is entirely devoted to the achievement of this objective. We adhere to all initiatives, to all that little contribute to achieve this objective. We try to the extent of our possibility as a return of peace to help in disruption where terrorism manifests itself, where it manifests you. Probably know it. We are stakeholders in certain number of actions which are carried out in particular around Lake Chad and the Sahel zone have the effect of combating the terrorism of the treaty so that all brother states, all the countries which are affected by this former of terrorism can recover peace, can get rid of this gangrene and can participate better in the development of Africa. Our some also within the framework of our diplomacy, we see equal that with interests of Africa are also preserved and be defended on the international arenas, particularly at the level of the United Nations, and therefore this is the reason why truly what the African Union we are trying the best that we can bring our prayer, our contribution to what with the African Union is this ideals and relay all the objectives of the goals it knows how to assign.
Peu de produits, peu de valeur ajoutée réalisée localement au niveau de nos produits, au niveau de nos productions locales, nous sommes condamnés à nous unir, nous sommes condamnés à rechercher, n'est-ce pas, des regroupements, des ensembles qui puissent nous permettre donc d'être plus compétitifs et donc de participer à cette compétition internationale que l'on observe au plan du commerce. Je parlais tout à l'heure de la DELECAF, ça c'est quelque chose qui nous paraît important, c'est un pas important. Il nous appartient donc de conduire cette initiative à son terme et puis d'explorer d'autres possibilités, comme par exemple lorsque nous décidons de nous industrialiser par exemple, je ne pense pas que, ça c'est notre opinion au Tchad, je ne pense pas qu'il soit, je dirais, indiqué ou souhaitable que nos pays produisent les mêmes choses. Déjà, nos marchés intérieurs sont très très exigus, sont très très petits. Si nous nous mettons à produire la même chose entre plusieurs pays voisins, il est évident que ce type d'initiative ne mènera nulle part. Et donc, il est peut-être, de notre point de vue, plus souhaitable de faire en sorte qu'on puisse spécialiser nos pays dans leur production en fonction, disons, des avantages comparatifs que ces pays-là peuvent offrir. Et donc, en un mot, je dirais que, aussi bien au plan politique qu'au plan économique, quand je parle de plan politique, je fais allusion bien entendu à la diplomatie, nous disons que notre credo, ce qui sous-tend nos actions, c'est la solidarité entre nos pays africains.
Oui, merci, d'accord, merci. The third question is, what are the cornerstones of Chad's relations with its neighbors, with African states as well? Troisième question est, quelles sont les pierres angulaires des relations de la République Tchad avec les États africains? In the north you have Libye, Niger, Central African Republic, le Soudan, le Cameroun, lac Tchad, Nigeria.
Bien, au
risque
de me répéter, nous, comme je l'ai indiqué tout à l'heure, nous sommes partisans d'une, je dirais, d'une relation apaisée. Nous promouvons une politique, comme on l'appelle là-bas, une politique de bon voisinage avec tous les pays qui nous entourent, parce que nous sommes conscients qu'il y va de notre intérêt. Il y va de notre intérêt. Comme vous le savez, l'année dernière, nous avons eu un événement qui a été particulièrement douloureux, qui a particulièrement été, je dirais, malheureux aussi bien pour le Tchad et tragique pour le Tchad que pour l'Afrique, c'est la perte.
I risk repeating myself as I indicated earlier. We are in a favor of a peaceful relationship. We promote a policy such as a policy of good neighborhood with all the countries around us because we are aware of our interests. As you know, last year we had an event which was particularly painful, which is particularly, I would say, unfortunate for Chad as well as Africa. It's a loss of Marshal Idris Deby in Tono. So this loss, you know in what condition it happened. It was following an incursion by a mercenary band, an armed band that attacked Chad on the same day that elections were organized with the manifest objective of disrupted these elections and taking power by force, and these armed gangs came from nowhere in a neighboring country, and so it is why we think that the good relationship, I would say excellent, that are trying to cultivate only with our neighbors depend on the chances for us not to be victims of this type of situation. This rival, unfortunately, because somewhere in other countries there are crises, and therefore these are rivals because the terrorists from which these missionaries left was not entirely under the control of central government, and therefore this situation there, unfortunately, it is produced, and all the time that we are practice other diplomacy calls the time during our relationships within the neighboring countries to cultivate this good understanding, principle of good neighborness with the countries which surrounded us in order to avoid such situation did not occur. You know, today we share borders with Sudan, with Libya, with Niger, with Nigeria, with Cameroon, and with Central Africa. It's a great distance to monitor. We have interests, just as these countries have an interest in ensuring that our borders are secure. Since the events in Libya in particular, we have witnessed a large quantity of weapons across the Sahel in particular, and we have good reasons to think this availability of weapons in large quantities and indirect connections largely explains this banditist terrorist group that they expect illicit activities along the borders, across the borders. And therefore, if you let's not combine our efforts, which of countries also praise individuals, will not be able to do good on its own. There are some who may be doing better than others. In general, what we observe is that we have more luck, and let us combine our efforts to reach an agreement. By exchanging information and by monitoring our borders, we have a better chance of indicating these types of scourge. Which is why, in addition to Union African, in which we participate, we also have our belonging to regional groups, sub-regional groups. For example, we are a member of ECAS, Economic Community of Central Africa. We are also a member of CEMAC. We are also a member of CILES. We are a member of the Past Authority of Niger, PN. We are a member of the LCBC, and therefore, our membership is these groups. These entities is largely explained by this concern to pull these efforts. By this concern to federate all of our initiatives to achieve these objectives as we seek to establish in our countries that of fighting together all the scourges such as terrorism, cross-border bandits. We therefore passes here a little the worries of what we are trying to do, what we are trying to promote, vice versa, the country's neighbors.
Par ce souci de mutualiser les efforts, par ce souci de fédérer l'ensemble de nos initiatives en vue d'atteindre les objectifs communs que nous recherchons, celui d'asseoir une paix durable dans nos pays, celui de combattre ensemble, n'est-ce pas, tous les fléaux tels que le terrorisme, tels que le banditisme transfrontalier, et j'en passe. Donc voilà un peu la quintessence de ce que nous essayons de faire, de ce que nous essayons de promouvoir vis-à-vis des pays voisins.
Merci, d'accord. C'est une excellence, d'accord. The fourth question is also revolves around terrorism and terrorist groups. Terrorist groups are very active in Africa and also in the Chad area. Can you share with us Chad's role in the G5? When we say G5, Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger, Mali and Mauritanie. And in français, des groupes terroristes sont actifs dans la région de l'Afrique. Pouvez-vous partager le rôle de Chad dans les G5?
Toutes ces questions se tiennent. Peut-être que nous venons l'occasion de donner un peu plus de détails à ce que nous avons déjà dit. Par rapport à la question sur le G5 Sahel, le G5 Sahel a été créé dans un objectif précis, c'est de lutter contre le terrorisme qui a pris des ampleurs, qui a pris des proportions inquiétantes dans le Sahel à cette époque-là. Et de plus en plus maintenant, on se rend compte d'ailleurs que ce terrorisme-là est en train d'évoluer même vers la zone dite du golfe de Guinée. Oui. Il y a des pays qui n'en étaient pas affectés il y a quelques années et qui le sont désormais. Oui. Oui. Voilà. Donc nous sommes conscients d'une chose, c'est que le Sahel constitue un peu l'épicentre du phénomène. C'est là que le gros des troupes...
We have more details than we already have about what the jihadists are in relation to the questions on the G5 Sahel. The G5 Sahel was created with a specific objectives. It's to fight against terrorism which has grown, which has become warring in the Sahel. At the time, and more now, we realize that terrorism is evolving even in the Gulf of Guinea area. There are countries that are not affected a few years ago that they are now. So we are aware of one thing, and that is that the Sahel was a bit exhausting of the phenomenon. That's where terrorist groups are trying to take root, and that's where our conviction started that we must together the 5 countries at the origin of the creation of the G5 Sahel, which are Burkina Faso, Mali, Mauritius, Niger, and Chad. We therefore started from this principle that we must all unite with the most, of course, of our partners, who must all unite to fight this scourge. Because terrorists have no borders, they know no borders. When they are established, somewhere they do not incur their actions, their activities to the place where they are able to live. Mali to hit Chad, to hit Niger, to hit Mauritius, just as they can live if there is a planted in a country like Chad. So we started from these convictions. This is strong conviction that we inform ourselves in order to be able to fight terrorism effectively. We have also realized something else, which is that terrorism cannot be fought only on the military level. It's also necessary to carry out actions at the military level. It's also necessary to carry out actions at the economic level, at the social level, or even the socio-economical level. You know, terrorism, it thrives on a number of realities. It may be taking advantage of the weakness of the state in the areas where it is shrinking, but it is also takes advantage of the precautions of the situation of the populations in a state or in a situation of vulnerability. I would say important. It's very easy to broadcast extremist message. It is easy to convince these populations to join these terrorism movements. So, starting from these convictions, our countries are committed to bring them together. Therefore, on the basis of all these convictions, our countries are committed to bring together and federating their means, first of all, to counter terrorist attacks at the military level, but also to avoid freeing all these vulnerable populations. By promoting a development dynamic, and therefore the G5 is based on these two pillars. There is a military dimension. There is also an economic dimension by the creation of actively and by the resolution social plan which these populations know. So it is true, we have scored points, but so far we have not succeeded in achieving all our objectives. We have unfortunately in the recent past the departure of Mali for reasons of its own, and today our ambition is to ensure that Mali can regain its place within the G5 Sahel. The current G5 is chaired by Chad because this last summit which was held on this organization was held in Chad. Giaman and it's the late president Marshal Idriss Déby Intono who took over the incomplete presidency. This presidency is ensured by the hand of the General Mahamat Idriss Déby, who is, president of the Military Transition Committee. He is also head of state, president of the Republic. After the days of the Marshal, and also we are in a period of transition, we continue on the same dynamic as the transition signed the commitments previously by the Marshal in the context of the fight against terrorism, whose framework of action likely to lead our objectives, whether through the institutions to which we belong.
Bien que nous soyons dans un régime de transition, nous continuons sur la même lancée, nous continuons sur la même dynamique. La transition a fait sienne l'ensemble des engagements qui ont été pris auparavant par le maréchal dans le cadre de la lutte contre le terrorisme et dans le cadre, disons, de toutes les actions susceptibles de conduire à la réalisation des objectifs, de nos objectifs, que ce soit au plan individuel ou que ce soit au travers des institutions auxquelles nous appartenons.
Merci, d'accord, merci. What are the socio-economic achievements of Chad and its development plan? Chad is a rich country now. It has oil, petroleum also. So in français, quelles sont les réalisations socio-économiques de Chad et les orientations de ces plans de développement? Merci.
Les actions que nous menons dans le cadre de notre développement sont comprises dans un document cadre que nous appelons Plan national de développement du Tchad. C'est un plan qui a vocation à programmer les actions, à les réaliser jusqu'à l'horizon 2030 avec des séquences de 5 ans généralement. Comme je le disais tantôt, évidemment, lorsque nous décidons de conduire des actions de développement, nous ne pouvons que compter d'abord sur nos atouts. Et les principaux atouts du Tchad aujourd'hui.
The actions that we are carrying out within the framework of our development are included in a framework document that we call Chad's National Development Plan. It's a plan which a vocation programs the actions carried out until the horizon 2030 with sequence of 5 years generally. As I was saying earlier, of course, when we decided to carry out development actions, we can only rely first and foremost on our strengths. The main strengths of Chad today, I said Chad is a country considered as a country of vocation, pastoral, agro-Slovo pastoralism. When we talk about culture, agro-Slova pastoralism, we are not a forest country, but we have by-produce forest products that are generated by trees, make the objects of an important dial, including with the exterior. The agricultural dimension of the country, I said earlier, we have between 39 and 40 million urban land. So barely 10% only are exploited, obviously. We also have the labor for that, since 80% of the population is in rural. We unfortunately have disability. It is that our agriculture is very little, very inefficient because it's weakly mechanized. Moreover, on this level, we have the ambition, among other things, to draw inspiration from the Ethiopian experience in the matter of what we say a lot of good get great results here. It's part of the area of cooperation that we have at the moment in Chad, and therefore this agriculture is weakly mechanized. As I said, it's entirely or almost entirely dependent on the most metrics. When the wintering is good, there are no problems ensuring the population's food supply. But when the winter becomes not good, let us say indeficient, as for example last year we have problem deficient, we have a major grain deficient. For some time our agriculture also relied on livestock. I said we have the essence by the few years ago, and we have not been talking for 100 million hectares distributed, and this breeding, unfortunately the beginning of potential, is very little valued in the Chad. The better our livestock, our trade, they are not on their feet. In the neighboring country, Niger is a big consumer, Central Africa too. And our ambition is to ensure that our countries, the government has promised to put in a place dynamic, let us say assembly or setting up of a modern slaughterhouse so that more and more livestock is sold on the hoof.
Nous puissions tirer plus de cet élevage en lui ajoutant, en lui conférant une valeur ajoutée. Et donc, nous avons, depuis quelque temps, le gouvernement a promis, a mis en branle une dynamique, disons, de montage ou de mise en place d'abattoirs.
Merci beaucoup. Ladies and gentlemen, that was His Excellency Ambassador Mahamat Ali Hassen. He's the ambassador of the Republic of Chad to Ethiopia as well as to the African Union. He's serving his country, Chad, since January 2021. He's in Addis, and we wish him well. We had a very, very enlightening discussion in English and in French. So that I would like to underline. So, Your Excellency, thank you for your time. Merci beaucoup. I wish you all the best in Ethiopia. I wish you success in your work, Your Excellency and Excellency.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I also thank you and wish you to bring the two countries and peoples together, and also to represent Chad in the African Union. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Professor Brukailu, producer and director of the Diplomatic Corner of Now TV, signing off. Until I see you next time with another distinguished guest, I say au revoir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you.